Okay, so we are continuing the Mishnayot. We'll just do one Mishnah. Masechet Pesahim Perek Gimel, Mishnah Gimel. Very interesting thing. So we know that on Yom Tov you're allowed to cook with an existing fire. So you're also allowed to bake with an existing fire. So on Pesach, we bake the matzot before Pesach. But technically, if you had flour is not chametz, as long as there's no water that touches it. If water touches flour and it's not turned into matzah within 18 minutes, then it's chametz. So technically, you could even make matzah on Pesach, and even on Yom Tov. You have an existing fire, you take flour, mix it with water, you make your matzah, but it's extremely risky business. Nobody does this because if you're off or if something happens, you can be making chametz. And sometimes a piece falls, so it's really risky. So, don't do it. I've never seen or heard of anyone doing it on. Baruch Hashem, we have a plenty, but let's say people they were, living by hand to mouth, etc., and they needed some food. Okay, take some flour, and let's say they made some matzah on Yom Tov. Now, you're getting to another question. There's a law of challah, hafrashat challah. We have a lot of challah bakes and stuff. Challah baking, so you would take a piece off. You make a big dough. You take a piece off for the Kohen. Now, that piece to the Kohen, there is a halacha about it regarding Pesach. So, the Gemara asks, and the Mishnah says, Ketzad asks the question, Ketzad mafrishin chala betum'ah beyom tov. So let's say you're making, on Yom Tov of Pesach, you're making a matzah, and you have a whole amount. Now, I take off a piece of chala. So, that could be very easy. Let me just make that into a little matzah, and I'll give that to the Kohen, because you're supposed to give it to the Kohen. And that's simple. But if, let's say, somehow it became tameh, it became impure, so now there's an issue over here, because the Kohen can't eat it, and the Kohen can't eat it, and also it's impure, and if you leave it, it's going to turn into chametz, and you're not allowed to burn it on Yom Tov, because burning Yom Tov, the usage of the fire could only be for cooking. You can't use it to now, firewood or burning other things. And especially this is something that's kadosh, you can't burn it. So it's an interesting question. And also you can't feed it to the dogs, because it's something that's holy. You're not allowed to use it for mevarin kochim b'Yom Tov. You can't use it in that way. So it's a complex work. Like, what do you do? This thing's going to become chametz if it became tameh. So what do you do in this case? So the first explanation, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Lo tikra Lashem ad shete'afeh. Rabbi Eliezer says, in such a case, what you do is that you don't separate the challah until you bake all of them, bake all the matzahs, and then take one matzah that's already baked and not chametz, it's already matzah, and say, this is the one that don't do it in the dough state, but do it in the after-baked state. So once after it's baked, now it's matzah, then you could say that's for the Kohen. But it's tameh. Okay, the Kohen can't have it, but at least it's not chametz. That's Rabbi Eliezer. And that's the way we're posek. Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera Omer, tatil batzonen. Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera says, what you do is, you take it off, but you put it in cold water. Keep it in cold water, that piece of dough, so that it doesn't become tameh. Keep it like that all the way till the end of Yom Tov, so it doesn't become tameh. But it's risky business, because how are you going to keep it cold the whole time? They didn't live necessarily in cold weather, right? So and it could easily become chametz. So the ruling, therefore, is not like that. Rabbi Yehoshua has a third opinion on what this will end, and also the ruling is not like this, and this is a little bit of a wild one. Rabbi Yehoshua. Rabbi Yehoshua says, This chametz is not, you're not commanded on the sin of not seeing, not owning chametz. He wants to say, it's not your chametz, it's not your problem. Meaning now that you remove it, it's not yours anymore. It belongs to the Kohen. But at the same time, which Kohen does it belong to? It belongs to a Kohen. It doesn't belong to any specific Kohen until you decide which one it goes to. So it's something interesting. He says, you've released your ownership from it. The Kohen, no specific Kohen owns it till you give it to him. So it's in a way unowned. And this is not a requirement for you the requirement is you can't own chametz. You don't own it now. So you don't violate that way. If you would eat it, you're eating chametz. That's not allowed. But you're not violating the ownership. Kohen's not violating the ownership also because no Kohen owns it. And if it turns to the chametz, but that's not your problem anymore. It's very interesting, out of the box way that Rabbi Yeshua explains it. Huh? The ruling's not like Rabbi Yeshua though. Yeah. So the ruling is like Rabbi Eliezer, that if you're in such a case, bake them all into matzah, leave it as a piece as a matzah tameh, but it's at least it's matzah and it's not chametz. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen. Rabbi Chananya ben Akashia amar tzak kadosh baruch hu lezakot et Yisrael lefi chachim ba'adam Torah, so shneimar Adonai hafetz man tzidko yagdil Torah ve'yadir.